and welcome to the next installment of the Security Middle East magazine's webinars. I'm thrilled to be back, joined by a stellar panel of speakers again today that I've had the pleasure of collaborating with in the past. Essentially today, we're going to be speaking about surveillance in malls and retail centres. And I think, having attended the Security Middle East conference last year, well, earlier on in this year, should I say, there was a real sort of transition away from security being an overhead towards collaborating with marketing and sales and it becoming more of a business growth engine. So the theme of the session today will be looking at how organizations, how malls, retail centers can potentially leverage organizations and systems and assets like that at MVP Tech, a conversion company, and Briefcam, to see how they can exploit the value from those assets and add value for the customer experience as well. But a brief introduction to the team on the call today. So myself, Dan Norman, I've been working with the Security Middle East magazine as a moderator for these sessions for quite some time now. My day job is I'm regional director for the Information Security Forum across the Middle East and Africa. Essentially, we're an association of member organizations providing best practice, frameworks, reports, and events for organizations to overcome information security and risk management challenges. But the stars of the show today, so Issam Shibhany, the head of pre-sales and business development at MVP Tech, a conversion company. Again, had the pleasure of running a webinar with him not only 2 or 3 weeks ago, but he's got a significant experience in the security realm with technical design, implementation. He's worked with a variety of clients across a variety of industry verticals. And our second speaker is Muhammed Sheikh, sales director in the Middle East and Africa at Briefcam. Again, a lot of experience in this space in the security arena, covering government, aviation, and a bunch of other regions too. So we'll jump straight into the session, but if anyone has any questions, please do add them to the question pane and we'll endeavor to get to them at the end of the session. But I'll start by welcoming Issam. And I think in recent years, there's been a significant sort of shift really in the retail landscape. Would you mind sharing your insights into how these changes have impacted the role of security and technology in the retail sector in the Middle East?
Sure. Hi, Dan. Hi, everyone. Hi, Mo. I'm glad to be part of this again, and hopefully with many more to come in the future. This is one of the dearest subjects to my heart, and I've been engaged through my career in several endeavors working around, the retail, the malls, and from the early days of the industry until where we are now. To give this a bit of a context, it's good to look at the main factor in retail. I would say the population in the region, especially in UAE. In 1981, before even I was born, the first mall in Dubai was Ghurer. And this picture being shared in the background sort of gives an idea about, how trading and retail has been at the heart of the country and the region in general through its history. So it was only a natural progression as the population grew in the region to see this, scope as well grow. In 1981, when Ghurer opened the first mall in Dubai, the population was around less than 2 million. It was around 1.5 or 1.6 million. When Deira city center opened in Dubai in 1995 or 6, I think it's 95, the population was again around 2.5 million. I mean, today, fast forward, we're only in UAE, we're about 10 million. and needless to say, we have hundreds of malls. So this brings us to the region in general. Same thing with Saudi. Not to go back as far as 1980s, but if you look at Saudi, in 2010, the Saudi population was around 30 million, a little under 30 million. Today, the population, just 10, 13 years later, is around 40 million. So the growth in population and the growth in the GDP and purchasing power of the people living in this region means that it's only natural that the retail grows along with that. We started seeing more malls, more sophistication in the retail sector, more retailers and global retailers coming into the region and wanting to set up shop here in this part of the world. And one more thing is that the population here is also a multinational, multicultural population. So you sort of get the best of all worlds, condensated here in this part of the world. So the main difference as well that goes along with the population growth is the fact that a lot of the retail is really transcended that traditional retail shop that you would go in, just buy something and leave. These establishments condensated in malls, and malls became like more of experience centers. The size of these places is just massive compared to before. You're looking at ice rinks, aquariums, leisure areas, retail shops, events within malls, fast activations happening here and there, kiosks popping up here and there, water features. So this sort of became the trend. So you had the population grow, you had the sophistication grow as well within these establishments, and parallel with all of these things came the regulation component, which sort of pushed everyone to have more technology in place. And this is a segue to talk a bit about the technology component of how things grew. So the second part of your question touched on how background of the retail and how sort of the technology merged into this. Again, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't much. The cameras was basically just your eye on the ground, and that's pretty much it. These are old analog systems, and there's not much you can do with them beyond looking at them. They were not scalable, they were not high tech, they were not digitized. And then early 2010s onwards, we started seeing a trend where these systems became IP, they became more scalable, they became much larger, more sophisticated, more technical. And then 2015 onwards, you started seeing AI pop into the picture, and this brings us to Briefcam today. So, from the early days, starting from a simple shop that doesn't even have a cash till, all the way to a very advanced mall with all sorts of multi-million-dollar systems deployment, you can imagine how fast this transition was and how fast it came with this population growth. So this is just to give a bit of context. And one last point on this from my end. It's also good to bear in mind that the movement of demographics in the region also changed. So you see a lot of youth and a lot of tourists in the region, let it be religious tourists or regular tourists just coming here to have fun. So this poses additional challenges and additional burden on these systems to be able to manage. And I'm sure in this discussion, we're going to be talking about the AI and analytics component of it. So we will touch on that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Issam. I think that's a really good sort of scene setter for the sort of trend, especially in the region. And I can second that, especially across Europe and the US. There's definitely been more of a transition away from the traditional eye in the sky. And there needs to be more associated value with the video analytics, which brings me on to my next question to Muhammed is, how does Briefcam view the role of video analytics in challenging that age-old perception of security being an overhead? And what is the new perspective that you can bring to the table here?
Thank you for the question, Dan. And I must say, it's always a pleasure sharing the webinar with you and Issam. The traditional security investment was basically asset protection and safety and security. But the traditional investment now can be used to gather information, and which could then turn your traditional cost center into a profit generator. How, you may ask? Because you see, the information gathered can enable positive customer experiences. In my experience, when I speak to these organizations, they have a whole new way of seeing the value of working across silos. So no more is it just the security guy saying, well, I'm only going to pertain to security and safety concerns. All of that is slowly moving away from that. And now what they want to do is work across silos, the marketing department, the C-suite, the finance department. Mall owners are seeing a bigger value in the whole aligning of enabling positive customer journey. Retailers are looking for information because they have ways to gather online online ways of generating customer information. But when it comes to offline, what they need to understand is, where do their customers spend the time in their stores, in their malls, or where do they dwell in the stores? And that matching and mismatching of that data, which will indicate what's popular online and offline, or is it a polar opposite? Is it that online certain things are popular while offline it's not? This sort of information is very, very helpful for marketing efforts online and offline to target the right customer base. The aligning of the departments on this customer experience, which using the technology that they already own, is immeasurable to retailers and developers, and the net positive return in the form of revenue and growth turns a cost center into a profit generator. Thank you, Dan.
Yes, it's such a sort of interesting perspective that security can add more value than just security itself. And again, that leads me on to my next question, back to Issam, really, and it's around that new perspective and changing mindsets. And I suppose in the context of analytics again, there, what capabilities have emerged in security systems? And I think of that through the lens of counting, metadata analysis, and how does that actually benefit retailers in the short and long term?
Yeah. So if we think a bit about it from the retailer perspective, and you know, when we talk about these technologies, it's also important to mention that they do add value in some areas of the retail sector more than others, and they do work very nicely. They fit very nicely in this environment. To give a bit of perspective, more than 80% of the retail value in the region is coming from Saudi and UAE combined, and a very large percentage of that is coming, I think north of 30% is coming from the luxury retail, and that's fairly quality oriented type of environment. I want to touch on this from the angle of retailers a bit, that what retailers look at when you're attracting these people to come into your property. You're looking at two things mainly: the footfall of people who are stepping in. You want more people to come in, and you want better quality of people to come in, depending on which you know, type of retailer that you're running. And you want a good conversion rate. You want people who come in to these stores to buy something, basically, or get their friends to buy more stuff. So it's very, very much along those two parameters that we try to use the systems to add value. So when it comes to the footfall component of things, these technologies, when they are put in place, they basically can tell you that answer questions about what is attracting those people. So if you're using something like Briefcam, we're going to have a look at this later. You're basically looking at how people behave when they walk into your property. What do they do? If you look at their behavior when they walk into the retail shops, you understand what is attracting them. Is it this particular aisle? Is this particular product? Is it a nice picture of something that's attracted them? So regardless if it's in a mall environment or in an outside set, independent retailer, it's basically the same thing. People behave in very similar ways, and these technologies are sort of designed to understand how these people are behaving, how these customers are behaving. The second thing that we want to talk about is the conversion rate. So you're looking at these people walking into your stores, and then hopefully they're doing some shopping, hopefully a lot of shopping. Again, these tools are empowering us to understand how these people walked in versus how these people walked out. Did they walk out with 10 bags? Did they walk out without buying anything? Did they spend 2 hours inside the shop, or did they spend 10 seconds and did not like it and just left? These are very important elements to look at, and we're talking purely at a store level. If you go a bit higher level to the mall level, you are again using this technology to look at different parameters. So now you're talking about groups of stores. You're talking about areas within the property itself. How do people behave when they walk into a mall? Men behave in a certain way, women behave in a certain way, different shopper types behave in different ways, and they are attracted to different areas based on preferences or based on marketing material or advertisements being served. So now we're talking a bit on a higher level of what these systems empower us to do. And in many cases, you're looking at not just the group of retailers, but the activities happening inside those malls. It could be that a certain water feature added inside the mall attracted thousands of people in a particular direction, and this gives more visibility to those retailers displaying in that area. You can go even a higher level than that. You can go to a city or a country level. And a lot of these applications, especially Briefcam, is very nicely tailored and suited to retail groups in a sense. Those that have multiple retail properties spread across malls, across cities, across different countries in different regions. So imagine you're looking at an entire region and you have a brand X, and this brand X have deployments across different malls, different cities. Each place has its own demographics, has its own consumer behavior, has its own footfall. So now you have this bird's eye view, except you're not only looking at these people's faces and what they're doing when they enter without any intelligence. Now you're using the data that Mo was mentioning, that you are collecting around those people and about those people, and then compiling it very nicely. And then you get the luxury of going back and looking at graphs, at trends, at very particular behavior. And this is gold, because you can now build decisions based on what you are getting through the security systems, and that's a key element in creating value from these systems.
Thank you for that. And I've seen a question come in, and I was going to wait to the end, but it links quite nicely to the next question I wanted to ask. And it's around how have advancements in hardware, smart sensors, processors, how have these things contributed to the effectiveness of video analytics? And the second question from one of our audience members here is around, how do you train the AI to work better? He says that the cameras need humans to teach them. Is that true, or is the hardware, sensors, processors more sort of forward thinking and more helpful in a sense?
Questions to me or to Mo, or?
That's to you, sorry, Issam. To you.
Yeah, sure. So I want a very interesting question, and I wanna answer it in two ways. The first answer, straightforward. The technology has become so much better than it was 5 or 6 years ago. it's by miles. You cannot even compare the way that these software applications are designed on these hardware solutions is working very nicely. The advancements in computer vision as well, and the programming component of these systems and the training models for these systems became super accurate. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we basically deploy a system. A lot of these rules and methodologies of detection are built into applications like Briefcam, and they work super accurately. The other element of this is the other part of your question, which touches a bit on AI. There is a misconception that's sometimes shared that, we now have AI and, it's being all more and more automated, and, it's amazing. It does everything for you, makes a cup of coffee for you if you want. But in reality, it's not the case. I can tell you that the gold mine of information that is generated through applications like Briefcam will require at a point in time for a human to look at this data and graphs and decide that, this luxury shop can be doing things differently to add value, or this mall needs to take care of that thing to add value. There's always going to be a human element in this, and that so far is not replaceable.
Absolutely. And I think a follow-up question here for Mo is, and I'm noticing the image on the back of the screen here, is could you perhaps tell us a bit more about the advancements in video analytics technology, especially within Briefcam's offerings, and how they can potentially empower retailers to gain invaluable insights from their video feeds?
Absolutely, Dan. So let's talk about Briefcam. You see, regulation helps a lot. Video surveillance is a standard for today's malls and retail companies. You can't even set up shop without the investments being in place. There are 1 billion cameras recording 24/7, but there needs to be something making sense of all of that video data. And that's where Briefcam comes in, because we have a platform approach to video analytics where you can sift through the video data that has been recorded in the past. You can get alerts in real time, and you can turn all that video data into facts, figures, numbers, bar charts, histogram, so that you can take data-driven decision-making. Now, there's only so much that the human eye can see. I think Issam pointed out very rightly so, that most of these big organizations have a central command and control center that is either citywide, centrally located, or even located regionally in a central position. Now, that makes it very difficult for these operators to take quick remedial action to a developing situation. With everything that's going around with a bank of screens, what happens is our human brains are not designed to take in that much information. In fact, the metrics is 95% of screen activity is lost to the human brain after watching a single screen for 20 minutes. Now, let that sink in with all the bank of screens moving in a command and control center. The probability of detection really goes down. That's why you need the video analytics tools such as Briefcam, so that we can make a sense of all of that unstructured data. With the advancements in AI and deep learning, these video feeds can then be used for smart alerting. These could be used for making data-driven decision-making. This has forced most of our customers to use our technology to deliver performance, accuracy, and with the region in a growth spurt, scalability. It's no secret that the e-commerce and digitalization of retail have transformed from just the way we shop. AI and video analytics are now playing a more central role, even in physical stores, to turn their video surveillance investments into business intelligence tool to gather data. These data-driven insights can then be used to enhance both physical and digital channels. It's common practice for retailers and mall owners to use both sets of data to make to have a comprehensive analysis of their customers and their operations. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. And I think moving on to the next slide, I've got another question, a follow-up question really for you, Mo, in that how can advancements in security software, namely video analytics, impact the retail business in terms of business continuity, compliance, and addressing challenges like shrinkage?
Absolutely. So look at it this way. There are about 30 different filters and attributes that are part of the Briefcam platform, which can address shrinkage issues, business optimization, compliance, and even continuity. Today's AI-driven analytics needs customized dashboards. Some of our biggest customers have hundreds of dashboards. So just to exemplify this, let's take one single feature like the dwell time. The dwell time is quite crucial for mall analytics to understand the movement patterns of their customers, because they want to be able to help security, because of course, if there is a security situation and people are dwelling, that needs to be addressed. But it's not just limited to that, right? Well, let's talk about overcrowding protection, because you don't want to have an overcrowding situation. So if a particular entrance is going to have continually an overcrowding issue, we can always put in a dwell filter and take remedial action to mitigate that. When we talk about shrinkage, for instance, we can understand the movement patterns of somebody who's going to stake out the store or the mall area and make sure that nobody's watching him. It's never usually on the first go. He will stake out and then probably commit the act. So that can be mitigated. And then there's the broader use case. Think about marketing, where if you want to understand which storefronts are popular, and the dwell filter will be the one to gauge that, because the more time spent means that the greater customer engagement has just happened just from that one filter. We operations talk about traffic flow or staffing requirements. These are also quite crucial because, again, it adds to the customer experience we talk about. At a mall level, think about engaging the cleaning crew at the restroom, and people are dwelling, just waiting in line. So you would need to very quickly send in the cleaning crew so that that is alleviated. The whole, in general, all of the above takes one thing in mind, is that it ensures a very happy customer journey. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can see it through the lens of sort of operationalizing the entire workflow of the mall, and yeah, significantly improving user experience for any retailer. And I suppose following on, I'd love to get your perspectives on that, Issam, in that, how do you think these advancements assist retailers in better understanding digital, the digital in-store experience? Is there sort of better understanding of customer experience, trends, behaviors, and things like that?
Yeah, sure. That there's a lot of that. I just want to, one of the questions that came earlier, want to touch on it very, very quickly, and you sort of followed up on a question on it, which is, you know, how much is the involvement, the human involvement in the AI? From the Briefcam lens, when it comes to the Briefcam type of application and the way it's installed and deployed, there is very minimal input for humans in terms of when you install the system and how you manage it and sort of, you know, sustain it day to day. There's not much involvement there. The involvement is more towards the dashboard side, where you are collecting this information and you are trying to visualize it in different ways. That's where, yes, there is a human involvement in that. But the AI itself, or the tool itself, or the way the camera is installed and where the camera is looking, there's not much to do there. Not like the old days where you had to have a specific angle and a specific coverage, and you had to fix it every few days. So we're miles ahead in that sense, especially with Briefcam. To your next question, yeah, I mean, there's a big impact. There's a big impact. You know, people need the physical experience. They need to go to the mall physically, to have the physical experience. If there was a misconception again that, everything is going online and malls are going to shut down and there's not going to be investments in big malls. And fast forward just 2-3 years after that conversation happened, and we're seeing a massive, malls coming up in the region and more to come. So if you tell someone about, how great a chocolate ice cream tastes from now until tomorrow, is never gonna feel the same as the person just walking to that place and taking a bite from that ice cream. That's the power of physical experience. Nothing is going to replace that. Another element is families in this region. Like, families use malls as venues to go spend time and chill. And some malls have even, education centers inside the mall where kids are going to get extra studies in different areas. So they need to go and have this physical experience. And once you get them to go to the malls and to these different retail outlets to get this physical experience, that's your opportunity to collect information about them, about what they do, about their count, how they behave, where do they stand, what they like, what they don't like, and all of that thing. The same thing could be done through the digital side of things, where, when people are scrolling and people are going through all of these online sites, you can also, and this is very common, extract their preferences, their profile, their history, and do all of those things. So that's the digital side of things. We're doing something very similar in the physical side of things when these customers are going into the malls. And that leads to a sort of an overlap between the two things, where you're going there, people are collecting information about your behavior, and they can give you a profile. They can create a profile, say, this is Dan, he came to our shop 5 times, he spent $1 million or more. I don't know what you do spend when you go to these places, but let's assume that you do. And then somebody is also tracking your information online about the same thing. So now you have 2 profiles of the same person and 2 different behaviors. There is a difference. There's a genuine difference, because if you're buying a Rolex, you're not gonna essentially buy it online with a click. You would, or something of a luxury nature, you're gonna want to go to the shop, see it, touch it, get a feel for it. And this applies on many different categories in retail. On clothing, for example, same thing. You might look at something the whole day online, and at the end of the day, you want to go to the store and try it to see how it feels like. So these 2 overlaps could lead to very valuable information. You have the physical profile of the person, you have the digital profile of the person, and if you're an advanced retailer that has the technology in place to sort of merge this information together, then again, this is very powerful for any retailer in any business, regardless, because you have the full profile, full visibility. So you can now custom tailor the advertisements you're serving, the offers that you're serving to this person, the messages they are getting on the phone, and all of those things. So look where we started. We started with an AI tool that is talking about counts, dwell time, consumer behavior, and motion. And now we're talking about very advanced stuff in the retail business that has a direct impact on sales, on the understanding of consumer behavior. And if you want to take it to a higher level, as a mall operator itself, like understanding the type of shoppers that are walking into these malls, and expecting that if Mo walks into the mall and he has a high preference for watches, for example, what type of advertisements shall we serve for him? Shall we send him a person maybe to say hello, and we invite you for to visit our shop, things like that. So these are the type of value adds that could come in place. And a last thing about this subject, most retailers, and especially retail groups in this region, many of them have loyalty programs where they already have a profile for you, and they understand the shopper, what the shopper likes and what doesn't like, how much they have spent in the last month or the last year. So that profile is already sitting there. What we're working on now is using tools like Briefcam to collect the physical side of information about the person without violating, of course, any compliance or GDPR or any of that. Just collect information about behavior. That's essentially metadata. And at some point integrate it with the digital information. and then come with a profile to make Issam more and then spend more basically. But I mean, this has value at some point for customers. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's clear that there are a number of potential revenue streams for malls, retailers that leverage this type of technology to improve not only the consumer experience, but I suppose the way in which people interact with the stores and how they can get value from it. I think I'll follow on there and pose a question to you, Mo, in that it'd be great to see some case studies or examples of businesses here where there has been a successful turn of the security systems into a profit center through these video analytics. Do you have any examples for us in the audience?
So in general, I can share examples of how customers use our product to gauge the sort of things that would make their businesses successful. So let's talk about how retailers can understand where their customers spend their time in the store, because online is easy, right? They know where they click, what they looked at, what was the most popular product online. But it's very hard for them to gauge the same sort of analytics from their in-store environments, right? And this is where our technology comes in, because we can help operations and marketing departments gauge that. For instance, I mentioned ideal store layouts at one point, because you want to understand that there is enough space for when you are attracting these customers. But if the customer journey is, oh, it's very cramped, the store layout was very claustrophobic, then that's something that doesn't add to the customer journey experience. Talk about merchandising or top product placement. You need to understand how difficult was the product. Marketeers need to understand if these products require hand-holding. They require staff to be present so that they could actually answer questions, because it's a very techy product. This sort of information, the dwell time, again, would be a very important tool for marketeers to understand how much time customers spent with their products, or how much time they spent trying to figure out what the product does. So all of this information can now be gathered from your in-store video analytics and the cameras that you already, and the investment that you already have in place. But this is from an in-store level, right? Think about a mall, for instance. Now, they want the same sort of metrics, but they want it over their whole premises. They want to understand which entrances are popular, which exits are popular, which are the areas where they want to attract the top brands. And for them, they also need this sort of metrics, this sort of data with footfall counts, because they need to then do their own lease negotiations, try to charge top dollar, for instance, because of the store being in a very popular area. Or think advertising, billboards, right? If they can have more eyeballs by placing their ad in a particular section with thousands of people visiting it on a daily basis, then that's something that they can get away with and charge premium just because of the footfall traffic. Vice versa, think about it the other way around. There are malls always have a tough time driving traffic to the unpopular areas, the top floors of the mall, which are sort of away from the parking spot. You always have to go back to the parking area, which is mostly on the ground floor or the first floor of the mall. So how do they drive traffic to these undesirable places, the third floors of the places where they want to drive the footfall traffic? Most malls, what they do is then they try to have short-term campaigns, something that is very popular, and they need to be able to gauge which short-term campaign was actually a hit, so that they could replicate that and drive more traffic to these areas. I think Issam touched on the fact about families. So using Briefcam, we can actually even understand how many mothers and children are in a particular area. And if they are in that area, then to ensure that, because this is a highly family visited oriented area, then the store promotions or the promotional placements would then cater to those areas so that the mom could have a great shopping experience and the children are taken care of. You see, data is the new oil or new gold. And just like you would need to refine the gold, or you would need to refine oil, you also need Briefcam to refine the analytics gained from the unstructured data. You see, online data-driven insights into consumer behavior, there are metrics that do that. But to have that now in a physical space, to be able to use AI and video analytics inside the physical stores, inside the malls, is the game changer. Analyzing demographics data over time allows retailers and helps them create tailored marketing campaigns. And it's not just for the physical sphere, but it goes across back to the digital. If something is physically preferred, like Issam said, people look at stuff online and then they come down and try to gauge how it feels physically. Well, vice versa as well, because we're also prone to shopping online. We know when we go and like something in a store, if we shopped online, we could get a better discount or sorts. So it works across silos, and there's a cross-pollination of that. So, and at a mall level, finally, I would say, is the ability to aggregate from premises to premises. All this data, if they have data for one premises, and most of these mall owners and developers have multiple properties, if not across multiple countries, then they need to be able to aggregate all that information, and they should be able to understand what works best in one premises and how they can replicate that success across the other premises. And it's not just the sales figures. It's about the whole customer journey, the challenges they faced, and how they mitigated it to make it a very good solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I think moving on to the sort of final topic, I think we've touched on quite a lot of areas around return on investment and the profit and revenue generating elements of these solutions. But I'll pose the question to you, Issam, is beyond the direct revenue implications here, what are the intangible advantages that stakeholders and decision makers should consider when investing in these technologies?
Thanks, Dan. So there's a direct and an indirect benefit of these technologies, indirect and indirect impact as well. But before I go into them, they are very sort of subjective to the particular retailer. They're subjective to the industry we're looking at. We're seeing that many retail groups, or not necessarily retail, even like large group that own multiple brands, they might want to look at these things, and this is how we're working with several close partners of ours in studying. They look at things very differently between one shop and the other, one mall and the other, one brand and the other. Without naming brands, but what you might need for a luxury clothing brand in terms of analytics might be very, very different from what you might be looking at for a car showroom type of analytic if you're working with one of the big brands, from Europe or Japan or something like that. So this element is very subjective, and the process that we normally run with our clients is try to understand first and foremost what they are trying to achieve, and that becomes basically the core element that we're focused at, the direct impact of these systems. And then a lot of things, when you're collecting these data and you're doing the analytics, a lot of things will pop up along the way, value adds here and there that you might pick up. In terms of direct impact, you can see the real estate impact on the real estate, the rental costs, the advertisement costs. Mo touched on this as well. These are all direct savings and direct impact on the bottom line of the business, especially when you have revenue sharing models between retailers and malls. And of course, in addition to that, one of the main elements of the direct impact to the ROI is the security aspect of it, where you are using these solutions to reduce shrinkage, You're using them to understand what's happening in the loyalty programs. You're basically getting information about your customers already enrolled in the loyalty programs that walk into the shops. You understand who they are. You might be able to do integrations with point of sale or with other systems running within the retail shop, even on a retail shop level, and then try to create value over there. So all of these things are basically direct impact to the bottom line. You're either saving a lot of money, or you are getting enough information to enhance a lot of the existing revenue streams that you might have and maybe create new ones. So the other part of it is the indirect impact. So you have a lot of things here. It's a very wide subject, and maybe I'll mention just a few to give an idea as a food for thought for some of the attendees. The main thing is, I think, the product placement, and maybe I'm touching on these things that might not relate to many of the security stakeholders, but for other stakeholders within these organizations, these are very important things. The understanding the product placement and how we're putting these shelves layout inside your shop. You can do that physically by looking at the shop, but you're not going to be able to look at the shop 24/7 or whatever your opening hours are for, weeks on time. If you have a tool that's actually extracting this information for you and putting it in a digital form that you can go back and revise, then you can say in a very scientific way that I need to change this shelf location, or I need to change this product location from this side of the shop to that side of the shop. On a very basic level, you can understand how much time people are window shopping in front of your property, for example, by doing these things. Very scientifically, with numbers and dates and accumulated numbers as well with Briefcam. So this is consumer behavior. This is product placement. The link to digital, we already spoke about it. This is, again, an indirect, intangible impact on the business. It's all revolving around the quality of information, the quality of analysis that you're able now to do, because you have the actionable intelligence, and then you can build sales strategies. You can build a lot of things to achieve that. So at the end of the day, we go back to our customers and say, after you have deployed these systems over a period of time, how do I know if this thing worked or not, basically? So that's where you get into a bit more advanced analysis, where you're looking at conversion rates, you're looking at growth in sales. And the nice thing is that if you have the sales numbers and you have the data of what's happening with the customers walking into your stores, now you can basically link these things together and look into this information very, very systematically and scientifically. This type of, let's say, luxury in our industry literally did not exist a few years ago. Now we can do it. It existed in the digital side of the retail industry and the malls, but now we have it in the physical side as well. And with a bit of work and competent system integration, I think it's achievable, and we're starting to venture into areas that really it's new for everyone, and it's a learning curve for us, for our partners, and for our customers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I'll hand over to Muhammed as well. I'd love to get your perspectives on, as more of a concluding point here, and any summarizing notes that you have around the tangible and intangible advantages of this solution.
Thank you, Dan. So I completely agree with everything that Issam just said. The tangible, of course, is the dollar value, right? We have greater sales, we have more revenue, but how did we achieve that? The intangible. And this goes back to the positive customer experience. Every little bit adds to that positive customer experience. Think about it this way. Your favorite restaurant, for instance, you love the service, you love the food, you love how nice it is, and you will go back just to experience it all over again, whether it's for satiety, whether it is for the whole experience, the ambiance, every little bit adds to that customer experience, right? Same thing happens with shopping. Same thing happens with traveling. That seamless experience, that familiarity, that comfort, the convenience of experiencing that is, regardless of the platform, is the total culmination effect. The connected engagement is what these experiences are all about. And therefore, every little bit plays towards that journey. So talk about product marketing, that helps in customer decision making, merchandising, of course, space utilization, that adds to the whole customer journey. But then add on services, for instance, right? If you don't have enough staff in your busiest hour, in your busiest store, then that mars the whole customer experience. There, nobody was there to help me out. I don't want to go back to that store. Think about it from a mall perspective. Something as simple as taxi availability. You have a great time. Issam talked about tourists coming to UAE. Well, they would love to go to the best malls in the world, but if they have to stand for 50 minutes or an hour in a long taxi queue, then that mars the whole experience and may deter them to go to a smaller mall or something of that sort, right? Whereas if simple metrics such as Briefcam was put in place, and you could just count and you could say, hey, take remedial action. There are about 10 people waiting in a taxi queue. Then that adds to the experience. Now you've had a great customer journey, and even your exit was a great was a great experience because the malls took care of that. Talk about something as simple as ATM machines or parking availability. I mean, nothing deters a great shopping experience than waiting in the parking lot, trying to get in. Families are separated, and you just wait there forever just for parking to open up. So companies with true visibility on consumer behavior and patterns, and they respond proactively and comprehensively to those, are the ones that are going to get the most customer loyalty, and which will ensure customers keep coming back for more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think that's the end of the presentations for now. I'm more than happy to jump into the questions if you'd like, Muhammed and Issam, or if there's anything else you'd like to show. Or
actually, Dan,
yeah.
Sorry, do we have enough time for a very quick demonstration? Because I find that to be super engaging before we go into the Q&A section.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got about 10-15 minutes left. So yeah, feel free to jump into that before we go into questions.
Sure. So let me just share my screen. Do you want to continue? Yes. And let me jump into my quick demonstration. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yep, perfect.
So I'm logging into a system, into our demo account, and just to take you through the platform and our video analytics capability. So let's just go through the platform approach to video analytics. And I think this will answer some of the questions that you have. So there are three distinct modules within our platform. We have the review module, which basically goes into past anything that was recorded and that can be analyzed for post-event investigation. Then we have the respond module, which is all about alerting in real time. So you could take remedial action very, very quickly and respond to a developing situation. And I'll spend the bulk of my time on the research module, because I'd like the audience to understand the capabilities that Briefcam brings to the table. So very quickly, if I go into consumer behavior, just to show you what's available right out of the box, what you see in front of you is a typical store. And if you wanted to understand how the store operates, where is the greatest concentration of people, you can see that every moving object is bestowed with a timestamp on it. And this is very, very helpful, because when you have hours and hours of footage, you do not want your operators to go through hours and hours of footage constantly. What we can do is we can just take a background image, and with our patented tool called Video Synopsis, we're able to just show you the moving objects in the shortest amount possible time. So If I can do that, and if I can remove objects that I'm not, or time that I'm not interested in, then I can also remove the objects I'm not interested in. For instance, if I were looking for a woman, then I can just remove every other object that is not a woman, and I can now show you what was the movement patterns of the female gender visiting our store. And if I wanted to very quickly show you a visual layer, a heat map of their activity, then I can just show you where they frequented, what were they looking at, where did they dwell. So I have a very quick filter over here that actually shows you what were the hotspots, the dwell points. And this would be a very quick visual example of how to engage dwell and understand what products the demographics was interested in this particular store. If I wanted to understand what paths were taken, all I need to do is click on my visual tool again, and everything, the UI is very, very friendly. And we are integrated with most of the VMS providers that are out there already. So this is a very quick demonstration of the capabilities of Briefcam, but I'd like to very quickly switch over to the research module, because the bulk of our conversation today was about data and taking information and using the data to take data-driven decision making. So if I were to go to retail trends, since we are talking about retail, you can see that we can create a dashboard that will then turn all that video data, attach rich metadata to those images, and then display them, turning them into facts, figures, numbers, bar charts, and histogram. So again, if I were interested in my female shoppers, then all I need to do is click on women, and automatically the dashboard is advanced enough to change all the data gathered about their shopping habits, what they were interested in, by the hour, by the day, how much, again, remember the dwell filter. So how much time they spent during their visit, and what was the maximum number of visitors per hour. I think there was a question about sensors and how we are different than sensors. This sort of granularity cannot be provided by sensors, but Briefcam is able to then drill down that data and present that to you. And as you can see, then the visual filters can also then be part of the dashboard. And if you wanted to understand on a particular, let's say if we were interested in sandals, and if I wanted to check out what was the interest in sandals, then there were 315 women who visited the store during the hours that we recorded in. And we could get an hourly breakdown, and at 2 o'clock was the most interest in sandals, and about the average duration was for 5 minutes and 56 seconds looking at shoes. No surprise there. At a mall level, what malls are really interested in is to understand the unique visitor analysis. So if I can walk you through this dashboard in the next couple of minutes before we go back to questions, you can see that even though there were 34,000 appearances, that means people passed under the cameras multiple times, but there were only 15,000 unique visitors. And why that's important is because you need to understand not the number of appearances, but the number of unique visitors. What Briefcam can do, because we use facial recognition for the employees for who we have the data available, we can even discount the employees from the actual figures. So you actually have unique visitor analysis of unique customers who visited, and that data is not marred with employees. And I think Issam rightly pointed out about loyalty programs. So if we have that publicly information available with the retailer, then he can also gauge the shopping habits based on visits done by their loyal customers. Very important is also to understand what was the average visit duration. And very, very important is to understand the bounce rate or the abandonment rate, because on the busiest day with 3,600 people visiting the store, they had a 9.5% bounce rate because people stayed for a minute and left. And this could be any of the extenuating circumstances, such as, was there not enough staff? Did they feel the store was quite busy and therefore they did not want to venture into it? and C-suite can then take this data and mitigate the situation so that customers stay longer on their busiest day. So with that, I'll end my quick demonstration side of things and back to you guys.
Thank you, Mo. And I think that really nicely sort of encapsulates what we're talking about here. But I'm conscious of the time and conscious also of the number of questions that I can see. So I'll try and summarize and pick the questions that I believe we haven't potentially answered throughout the session today. I have one question for Issam. I'll direct it towards Issam. It's around implementation. The question is, what are the cost implications of implementing advanced surveillance systems in retail? And how can businesses justify these investments in terms of revenue?
I mean, there is, of course, a cost, related to doing this. And this cost is relevant or relative to the size of business, but it's also relative to what we are trying to achieve. In many cases, we have seen these systems pay for their cost within days of having them deployed, because of the value of the information that they are creating and the business decisions that you can make, or a direct impact on reducing shrinkage in some cases. So yes, there is a cost incurred in achieving those systems, and it depends also the level of complexity. If we're talking about the cost of these systems versus your traditional IP system deployed in place from a decent combination of brands, it could be anywhere between 5 and 15% of your total value of the system. If we're talking about, again, decent sized systems, so maybe to give it a bit of context, maybe a couple of hundred cameras and more in a big retail store. So in that case, we're talking 5 to 15% of the value could be going for something like the solution we're working with here. What we urge our customers to look at is, before we deploy and before we decide even on these systems, we do a projection on basically the ROI that's expected from these systems moving forward. And this ROI can help everyone around the table to make the right calls in this sense.
Thank you very much. I suppose that there's a couple of questions around privacy. There's a few in here around privacy implications for users. I think we touched upon that during the presentation, but I'll point the question towards Muhammed. Are there any strategies that malls and retail stores can employ to monetize the data without compromising customer privacy? Or are there any privacy implications with these solutions?
So let's just put it this way. Briefcam is GDPR compliant. There's a big push on privacy in almost all parts of the world. There's in the US, in the UK, so we are very much GDPR compliant. Locally, I think there's Law 45 that's going to be coming into effect, which is based off of GDPR compliance. Now, GDPR says that you need to have the capability of pseudonymization of data. Therefore, as Briefcam, we do not collect any PII information, such as personal identifying information. So the camera sees your face, for instance, Dan, and it assigns it a value. And it says that face has a value of 729. Now, every time you step into a mall, we will say, oh, that's a 729, that's a returning customer, but we will never be able to say that's Dan, or that's Muhammad, or that's Issam, for instance. So you're very well safe. And again, this data is not published online. The software itself is not online. It resides on customer premises, and therefore we are very much GDPR compliant. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's as clear as it could possibly be. Just looking through the questions here. I think one question for Issam, I suppose, is around integration. Integration with other retail technologies such as POS systems, inventory management. Is integration fairly easy to do within your solution?
So on this part, it's maybe less related to Briefcam, but I will answer it. I will answer it. So it depends on what type of VMS we have in place. If we have a decent VMS in place that's open platform enough, that's capable enough, we can basically, and we have done it in many instances before, develop these sort of integrations between the point of sale systems or inventory systems and the VMS. And the way it works, without going all technical on this, but you can say the video management system, or VMS, sits at the heart and soul of everything we're talking about here. And connected to it are applications like Briefcam, the point of sale, or other things. This is how, in a sense, it would look like. So if the heart and soul of the system, being the VMS, is capable enough, and the integrator or the SI is capable of having the software skills to do these kinds of integration, then yes, it's very possible. And to be frank, just to add on this, it's not that expensive to do it, by the way. You just have to know how to do it. And then the connection from the information that's being generated by Briefcam could be linked to these other systems. But at the end of the day, you need to have the right elements in place to drive solutions like these.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that pretty much summarizes a lot of the questions we've seen come through. So I'd like to, I suppose, conclude the session. I think that we've covered quite a lot of angles here in terms of the return on investment on video analytics systems, I suppose the trend within the Middle Eastern region for retail and other sort of industry verticals in that space, and the potential value that this solution has. So I'd like to thank you both for your time. I'd like to thank the audience as well for attending, and for all of the questions. And I would certainly recommend exploring both websites on the bottom of the screen, having a look at the QR code there as well. But any summarizing points from both of you gentlemen, or more than happy to close and potentially have attendees communicate with you offline.
Well, from my end, maybe a last word on this, and I know many end users that are interested in these solutions did attend. I hope they're still with us online. But these type of solutions will require collaboration internally within your organizations, because you're gonna be adding value to different departments, to your marketing, to your HR, to your leasing, to your merchandising. The list goes on and on. But as a final word from me, as representing Convergent, as a system designer for these things, I'd like to say that none of this will work if there is no collaboration between the system integrator, the vendor, and the end user themselves. These are very technical systems, but above all, they are offering business solutions, and they are very custom tailored to each individual business. And the role we play in building these solutions, solving these problems, adding this value, is not going to work unless we have a dialogue with the end user, and we build this together. And then it's on us to do the proper engineering to make sure that the solution eventually is a success. That's it for me. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mo, for the nice session.
Thank you, Issam. And I think Issam summarized it quite rightly. I think the work actually begins for us when the system is installed, because previously it was just connect the cameras, connect the VMS, job done. But I think the real work for Briefcam actually begins where we start collaborating with Convergent, where the heavy lifting comes in to actually then start providing the data and to mine that data and to actually then fit it for the customer's needs, a very bespoke solution. And each customer is going to be different. Each vertical is going to be different. Today's webinar was all about retail, but there are other verticals that, again, the same platform applies to. So The real work will actually begin once the cameras are in place, the VMS is in place, and then we'll have to go through a slow process, a partnership, helping Convergent, working with Convergent and the end user to provide data-driven decision-making. That's it from my side, Dan.
Brilliant. Thank you both. And thank you to the audience. We hope you thoroughly enjoyed the presentation today.